Well, look here, wifey, my husband said, his voice so loud that even the spices on the shelf trembled. He was standing in the doorway, one hand on his hip, the other holding the last grocery bag as if it were a trophy. His smile had that tone of cheap satisfaction, the kind that feels proud without cause. I looked at the countertop, the receipt he'd tossed at me, the little total circled in pen, full of condescension. The house smelled of garlic and cheap perfume. The clock over the stove seemed louder than usual. People make declarations when they think they're safe, I thought, when their confidence is propped up by the weary legs of someone else's patience. My name is Sophie Hal, I'm 33 years old, and if you think you know how this ends, just you wait. I smiled. The kind of smile you give when you're collecting evidence. All right, I said calmly, with the stillness of a held breath. Good, he replied, triumphant. Consider it fair. He didn't see the small list taped under the spice rack, the one I'd written 2 nights before after another month of excuses and last-minute loans. In tiny letters it said, Groceries, remove his name from the account, emergency fund, kitchen rules. I tore the list in 2 and hid each part in different drawers, like a magician hiding her cards. We're having about 20 family members over for your birthday, he said later in a honeyed voice. Your mom is going to love seeing how generous I am. He was smiling happily, convinced he could throw a party and win applause from people who only noticed me when there was food involved. He never understood that generosity can also be a performance, a theatrical act disguised as kindness. 3 days later, when the first car pulled up in front of the house, the air smelled the same as it did at every party. Cinnamon, roasted chilies, and the silent tension of expectations. The dishes gleamed in the oven, the table was set like a stage. My husband hovered, anxious, ready to receive compliments. The guests came in laughing, with wine and gossip in their hands, until they stopped. The room became small, sharp. Their gazes scanned the island, the place cards, the buffet, but they stopped on a note placed right where the roast should have been. The note read, All food was brought by the guests. No access to the kitchen. Please leave coats and purses at the entrance. The silence fell like flour on the countertops. Soft white, impossible to ignore. My husband was the first to freeze. His face shifted between confusion and disbelief, as if he were waiting for a punchline that never came. His brothers, cousins, and that one aunt who never left without taking a plate, sniffed the air looking for dinner, but there was only the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and a silent challenge. What is this? He asked, holding up the note as if it were written in another language. Exactly what it says, I replied, calmly folding napkins. Everyone brings their own food, remember? Separate groceries. A few people tried to laugh. It's a joke, right? His mother asked, clutching her chest as if the family's reputation depended on my answer. I smiled at her sweetly. Not at all. Since we have separate budgets, I didn't want to burden my husband with feeding 20 people with his provisions. The words landed like cold water. His cousin pretended to check his phone. Someone muttered, Wow, that's harsh. You're embarrassing me in front of my family, my husband said, his voice trembling. I looked him straight in the eye. His hands gripped the counter as if by squeezing it, he could control the situation. Yes, I can, I said slowly. And I did. I pointed to the empty table. If you want to stay, go ahead. I made coffee from my pantry. For a moment, no one moved. Then, little by little, the courtesy crumbled. Someone coughed. Another muttered an excuse. The doors opened and closed, one after another. When the silence returned, it was just him and me. Me calm. Him, his face as red as the pot on the stove. Are you crazy? He spat. No, I said, finally sitting down. I just stopped losing everything else. He started pacing in circles, breathing heavily, as he always did when control slipped from his grasp. You humiliated me, he said, slamming his fist on the counter. You made me look like an idiot. You didn't need my help for that, I replied. He froze. You think you're so smart? No, I said in a low voice. I'm just tired of being convenient. He grabbed his phone, his keys, his wallet. Harsh movements full of rage. You'd better fix this before they start talking. I crossed my arms. Let them. Maybe they'll finally see what I've been living with. He stopped, surprised that I wasn't shaking, wasn't crying, wasn't begging for forgiveness. For years, every fight ended the same way. Me cooking his favorite dinner, pretending that peace was worth more than my silence. Not this time. I went to the fridge, opened the door, and pointed to 2 shelves, one with his name, the other with mine. Look, I told him. Yours beer, bacon, junk food. Mine vegetables, yogurt, and sanity. He blinked, unsure whether to laugh or get angrier. When you said separate groceries, I thought you were serious, I continued. It seems the only one who listened to you was me. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He had run out of script. The confidence that had once made him attractive now made him look small. Go on, tell everyone I don't cook for you anymore, I said calmly. Tell them why. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard that a picture frame fell to the floor. Picked it up. It was from our wedding. We were both smiling, but even then my eyes already looked tired. That night I cooked a small dinner just for myself. The table had never felt so peaceful. The next morning the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Missed calls from his mother, texts from his cousins, and a very long voice message from his sister. How could you do this to him on his birthday? I sat at the table eating oatmeal with berries, my groceries, letting the notifications pile up. Every chime was proof. My silence was finally louder than their noise. When he returned that afternoon, the air was thick with reproach. You turned everyone against me, he said. No, I answered, calmly rinsing my plate. You did that the day you treated your wife like an underpaid employee. Oh, don't start with your feminist speech, he scoffed. It's not about that. You're right, I said, turning off the water. It's about respect. The kind of thing you can't buy no matter how hard you try. He started pacing the kitchen again, his voice rising with every step. Do you know what people are saying? That I'm broke, that you control me. If you cared half as much about the truth as you do about your image, we wouldn't be here. He clenched his jaw, grabbed his jacket and muttered, Fine. You want separate lives? You'll have them. And he left again, tires screeching in the driveway. I stood in the doorway, watching as silence fell over the house like dust. I smiled, a small real smile. That same afternoon, I transferred my savings to an account solely in my name. That night I changed the locks, and the next morning, a moving truck arrived at the curb. His things were ready, boxes, labels, all in order, waiting for him on the porch. Sometimes revenge doesn't make a sound. It's just well planned. By late afternoon, the house felt lighter. His clutter was gone. No more socks on the floor or unpaid bills on the counter. Even the air smelled different, of citrus cleaner and freedom. I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, looking for extra work just because I could now. For the first time in years, every decision was mine. My phone vibrated again, this time with an unknown number. The message read, You can't just kick me out. My name is on the lease. I took a slow sip and replied, Correction. It was as of this month. I paid the rent. The landlord has already updated the contract. 3 little dots blinked on the screen. Then silence. At 8 o'clock, someone knocked on the door. I didn't move until they knocked more insistently. I opened it just a crack. There he was, his eyes glassy, holding a grocery bag like a peace offering. Inside, cans of beer and instant soup. I came to talk, he said, trying to sound calm. I get your point. I wasn't trying to make a point, I replied firmly. I just made a decision. He sighed. Do you really think you can make it on your own? I'm already doing it. His laugh was small and cruel. Let's see how long you last before you come crawling back. I smiled. If that happens, I'll bring my own groceries. He looked at me, realizing this conversation wasn't going to end in surrender. He left the bag on the floor and walked away. The next morning I left for work early. I stopped by a cafe and ordered breakfast for one. Avocado toast, fresh coffee, peace. The barista smiled. Celebrating something? Yes, I said. I got my appetite back. And this time, I'm not feeding any egos. Weeks passed, and the silence became comfortable. I hadn't realized how much energy I was wasting, living with someone who filled every silence with criticism. Now mornings began with coffee and a podcast, not a list of my flaws. At work, my colleagues noticed. "You look different," my friend Dana told me at lunch. "Like you've finally gotten some sleep." "I have," I laughed. For the first time in years, I was focused on my projects. I finished work early. I even started baking again, something I'd given up because he said it was a waste of ingredients. My small apartment smelled of vanilla and cinnamon, like little pieces of freshly baked peace. One afternoon, a thick envelope arrived. The familiar handwriting on the front was his. I didn't open it right away. I left it on the counter for hours until my curiosity won. Inside was a single note. "We used to be good. Let's fix this. I miss you." There was no apology, not a word about the slap, the humiliation, or the public scene that started it all. Just nostalgia, the cheapest form of manipulation. I tore the letter in two, threw it in the bin, and smiled at my reflection in the refrigerator door. Everything fresh, everything mine. That night, I wrote an email to the landlord requesting to remove his name from the lease and leave only mine. I attached proof of income, receipts, and a brief note. "The other tenant has moved out permanently." Before going to sleep, I sat on the balcony with my tea and whispered to the air. This is what love should have felt like. Quiet, clean mine. No begging, no deals. Just being. And when I turned off the light, the house didn't feel empty. It finally felt like my own. A month later, I found a letter taped to my door. It wasn't from him. It was from his mother. Her words bled guilt between every line. "He's not doing well, Sophie. He says you turned everyone against him. You were always the smart one. Can't you help him?" I read it once, folded it carefully, and tucked it under a pile of bills that were no longer mine. Guilt was their favorite currency, and I no longer traded in it. That night, Dana came over with a bottle of wine. We made pasta, opened all the windows, and laughed so loud we scared the cat. Halfway through dinner, she looked at me and smiled. "You're really over it." I smiled, twirling my fork. "You know how they say you have to hit rock bottom? Well, I hit rock bottom and built a kitchen on top of it." She raised her glass. "To separate groceries." We clinked our glasses, and it felt like signing a pact with myself. The next morning, I received an email from an online publishing platform where I'd submitted an anonymous article. "Congratulations, your text, The Grocery Aisle Divorce, has been accepted for publication." I read the title and burst out laughing. My story, Our Ridiculous Fight, had become something useful. Healing disguised as humor. The article went out that weekend and became viral. Comments poured in from women all over the world. "You wrote my marriage. I'm buying my own groceries tomorrow." Reading them, I understood. The revenge had transformed into something softer, stronger empowerment. I didn't need to destroy him. I just needed to rebuild myself high enough for others to find the way out too. The article grew bigger than I imagined. It was shared on forums, blogs, even on a morning show segment called Women Reclaiming Their Kitchens. My inbox filled with messages, some thanking me, others asking how to start over after years of erasing their own voice. And of course, one eventually came from him. No greeting, no apology, just one sentence. "I didn't know you would turn our private life into a public joke." I read it twice, then wrote back, "It's not a joke. It's a map." And I hit send. Weeks later, I stood in my newly painted kitchen, the same place where it all began. The walls were now sage green, not beige like before. I replaced the old table, too many ghosts, and filled the shelves with things I loved. Spices he used to mock, teas he called pretentious. That day, my first royalty payment arrived. Small but symbolic. Half went to savings, the other half to a new online fund I'd started. The Shared Shelf. Microgrants for women leaving controlling relationships. Poetic, I thought. Turning a fight over groceries into fuel for freedom. That afternoon, Dana returned with flowers and a smile. "You're in the news again," she said, showing me her phone. The headline read, "From Domestic Disrespect to Digital Empowerment. The Viral Story of One Woman." I laughed. I guess my groceries ended up feeding more than one person. After she left, I poured myself a glass of wine and set it next to my dinner, a simple plate of pasta. No audience, no performance. I looked around my quiet, sun-drenched kitchen. For years, I thought being strong meant enduring. Now I know it can also mean ending. I took the last sip, smiled at the life I had cooked up from scratch, and whispered to myself, finally, this is what home tastes like.